Hi, everybody, and welcome to another show from Cuppa Tea with the Vet. And today we have got Simon. Hi,
Hello.
Simon. So it's lovely to have Simon on. He is from Kelperland Vets, and I've been desperate to talk to him for a very long time because it's always really nice when I have the local vets that are around my area, because it's what so many of my lovely clients and you guys all know these practices as well. So Simon from Kelperland, will you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Simon. I run Kelperland Vets with my wife, Camilla. It's based in between Maidenhead and Windsor, dog and cat practice. It's been around in the area for years, actually, since sort of the end of 1950s. And me and Camilla bought it in 2014. And that's where we've been ever since.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. So I have known that you've been there for a long time. So obviously, you've taken over from the previous founders then. Has
Yeah.
it only had one founder before you
No,
guys?
it's so obviously the whole thing about ownership in vet practices is quite relevant these days, and it's always been independently owned, which means sort of privately owned by a family. The previous incumbent was a legendary vet called Mr. Steve Cook, and he was a vet in the area for many years, 30, 40 years, and he bought it off another guy. He bought it off another guy who started it basically. So I think I'm the fourth or fifth in the hot seat. But yeah, it's pretty cool actually. We still get some clients, and there's a few clients who literally came in when they were kids with their grandmas and things like that, and now they're grandmas. Obviously not to see me, but when the thing first started, and it's such a sort of weird name for practice, it's quite memorable. So yeah, we still get the odd client who come in and say, "Oh, we used to come in the '80s, and we googled you. It's nice to see you still around," and then they come along, which is pretty cool.
It is, and do you know, I have to say, as a country bumpkin, so I'm originally from Wiltshire, and we are those type of people. You know, that's your village vet is your vet for
Yeah,
life. And it's quite funny because when I go back to, because everybody will know the practice. I mean, loads of my clients still use that practice because it is
yeah,
where my family are from, and it's Purton Vets, and it's really weird because when you go back in, your head goes back to how the original was. And I used
yeah,
to go there from day dot when I was a teeny little child, and I used to look
yeah.
up at the vet who owned it at the time, Alan Robinson, who obviously everybody's heard of because he now does marketing. He's actually quite famous.
Oh, I know Alan.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody knows Alan. Everybody
yeah.
knows Alan. And so I go in and then I'm like, Alan, because when I was little, he was who I idolized and looked up at and was like,
Yeah,
that's what a vet does. And I
yeah,
remember when I went in for my work experience and Alan was there, and then he left, and then Graham took over, and I go back, but I know so much history, and all the nurses don't because they're all the new staff,
yeah.
and
Right.
I'm just
Yeah,
that tiny little child who knew the place back in day dot, and it feels so bizarre
yeah,
for me because if I go out the back and wander around, I'm like, oh, it used to look like this, and it used to look like that,
yeah.
and actually there was a half of the vet practice was a florist, and so those nostalgic stories are actually quite important to the people that it's relevant
Yeah,
to.
that's really
So
true, actually. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. We have a lot of people who say stories like that. But it's also important to me and Camilla. That one of our things is we want to be important to the community. That's a real sort of founding thing of us, and that's something that's really important that we carry on with. Just being part of the community and useful to it.
for sure, and you absolutely will be, because I think they're the heart and soul. Well, maybe I hold it in more relevance than it perhaps should be. In that, for me, it was the world was the veterinary
Yeah.
practice
Well, I
because that
think
was
yeah, that's
the
it. Like you
destiny
and
for me.
me, crazy animal people, will
Yeah,
that I was the same. Like I grew up on a farm, and when the vet came round when we were kids, it was like rock star.
that's
Uh,
it.
and yeah, lo and behold, that's what I wanted to be. So it's yeah.
But that's lovely. That's lovely. So, I mean, that takes us straight, to our first question of what made you become a vet then? So, was it that? Was there any outstanding stories that your vet did that made you think, I've got to do this?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I grew up on a dairy farm, and we had lots of cows, we had horses, pigs, sheep, we had loads of dogs, loads of cats, and the vet was present every week at least, and so just grew up around vets, and then I really enjoyed science at school, and I was pretty good at it, and then from about 13. I went round for a week with my dad's vet in the car. Absolutely loved it, and that was it. It was dead easy. It was like, what do you want to be? Vet. Dead easy. And when I was at college, loved it. I started work, love it. I'm so lucky. Loads of people have like, what are they going to do? I don't know what to do and all that. Obviously, that's more normal really than me. I'm really happy, lucky that was me. But I always wanted to be a vet, loved it, and I'm very lucky that I continue to really enjoy it.
And never look back.
Yeah, well, try not to.
Fantastic. So what do you like to do in your spare time?
I'm a family guy. We've got 2 small children, so a lot of our life these days is spent in drinking coffee in playgrounds and running around after them, which is lots of fun, and lots of our mates are similar age. But from a personal perspective, sport is my main pastime, all sorts of sport really. I'm a cricketer, but that's not particularly applicable to being a business owner and family man in terms of time.
It's a long game, that.
Yeah, that's the problem really. But I still play a bit, and then I play any sport really: squash, golf. I actually go paddleboarding. That's my new love. But the great thing with that is you can do it in the morning, so I can go at 6 in the morning before work, so it doesn't interrupt family life or work life. So that's quite cool. And they've just started the early mornings this week, so that's a really fun thing to do in the summer.
Oh, that's really lovely. I must admit, my friend got me into paddleboarding, not hugely, as in, because I'm a bit scared of water really, but I really like it. I really enjoy it. It's lovely being out there. I'm just a wimp when it comes to water, so I don't know why I've got such. It's because it's cold, isn't it? I think I know exactly.
Yeah, it is. Well, right now it's proper cold. Yeah,
exactly.
A couple of weeks ago, which is. It doesn't happen very often when you've been doing it a while, but it was really windy and gusty, and I was like, and it was proper freezing. But yeah, it's a really sort of tranquil start to your day, and a pretty good workout if you go for it as well. So it's really nice.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that for sure. My friend took me to one on a beach, so it was on the sea, and it was choppy.
Yeah.
It's like she had to work quite hard.
Yeah, like going on the lake in Bray is often like a mill pond, so it's a piece of cake in comparison to that. Yeah,
I've done Bray Lake. My friend took me there. Yeah, that's lovely. It's very pretty there. Very pretty. Yeah. I can't deny. My daughter, she has some waders so that she can go in the river and because she spends ages in there, and I always feel so bad about her having her legs in there for so long. So I thought, get her some waders. Definitely a massive tip for kids, by the way, because she loves it and she can be in there for ages. But I've got to watch them. And then she said, "Mom, why can't you come in?" And I was like, freezing.
Yeah.
and then she said, "Well, you get some waders." I was like, "Oh God, that's a really good point." There's no real arguing with that. So now we've both got waders. Which is totally bizarre, but I think it's just going to be really great fun because, like you say, it's nothing more peaceful than a nice bit of open water. So that's lovely. That's really lovely, and it's quite a vetty thing to do. Actually, quite a few vets. Never met a single vet that plays cricket at all, but I have met a few that have done paddleboarding, and I think it's just because of the mental health stuff. So
it's good for that for sure. Yeah,
definitely. Well done. So, what's your favourite part of being a vet?
I don't actually think I've got one favourite part. I enjoy the different aspects to it. I've always enjoyed kind of the James Herriot-ness of it, and by that I mean it's still the same as it was in his books. Like it's really varied in terms of the animals and the people, and you get amazing characters in terms of animals, amazing characters in terms of the owners. Amazing cases, extraordinary situations happen all the time. A lot of them are very enjoyable. Some, unfortunately, very serious and upsetting, and so on. But there is a lot of that James Herriot-ness still exists, and I love that aspect to it. From a clinical standpoint, surgery is the thing that I really enjoy clinically, and by that I mean, like, do I enjoy scanning things or skin cases or eye cases, but I enjoy actually operating on animals, and I enjoy operating on bones and joints and complex cases. It's a good challenge. The thing about surgery is once you start, the animal's under anaesthetic, you're committed. You can't stop and think about it. You can't stop and do it the next day. You've just got to do it and problem solve, and do your best. And things go wrong, and so it's a big challenge. But I enjoy so it's practical in terms of using your fingers and dexterity, but also problem solving, and then also using your knowledge that you learn over the years. And it, like, from a geeky perspective, it's really cool if something happens that's literally in the textbook and you're like, oh, that is classic. And it's extraordinary, that someone else has seen that happen and then they've written it down in a book, and then I'm here in Windsor and I get exactly that case has happened, like a bit of bone is broken in exactly the same way as it says in this particular textbook. That kind of stuff I just find completely fascinating.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be fascinating, because obviously biology just isn't so samey. So when you do have a moment of same, that must be quite bizarre. So I can imagine the statistic counting. And totally back on your point about, once you've started, you've got it, you're committed. That's it. When I get annoyed with my husband, who works in computers, I always say to him, I can't just turn my animals on and off, can I? So that's always my thing about, the work is hard. You've got to think it through. You've got to have a plan, and the plans don't always go as you want them to, but you've got to be able to think outside the box, think on the spot, be creative, and I have heard it said many times, and quite rightly so, veterinary's an art. So, it's a science and an art, and it is so complicated because of that. So that's fabulous. But you also said about the variety of it all. So have you got any sort of funny stories that you want to share about your consults?
Well,
I've heard some great ones, and I love them.
I mean, all vets could probably write a book. I mean, obviously the James Herriot I've mentioned. We lost all our books 2 years ago. Me and my wife were real book hands. We put them in storage because we were doing some work at home, and believe it or not, the storage place burnt down, and we lost every book that we owned. And I lost all my James Herriot's that my grandma had given me. And then we went to a charity shop and I found the whole thing of James Herriot books. So I bought them all and I read them all again 2 years ago. It's really sad. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, but so all vets have stories. Probably my best story is a little bit naughty, but it's funny and it's got a good outcome, which is when I was working in London and someone rang up and said they had a tortoise and something was wrong with its penis, and would we see it? And they'd rung round 10 of the vets and no one would see it. And I was like, look, I spoke to him on the phone. I said, I don't really know much about tortoises, but bring it down, let's have a look. Brings it down and it's got a massive black penis like hanging out behind it, and black in terms of it's got no blood supply and it's dying, and it's been bitten by something and its penis is protruding and dying off from the tip upwards towards the tortoise. And then I was like, well, I think that just needs removing, like excising, but I couldn't remember whether you could amputate a tortoise's penis. So then I had to consult umpteen textbooks, and ultimately tortoises don't urinate out of their penis, they only reproduce. So all I did was tie a big bit of stitch around it under anaesthetic and remove the dead bit of penis, and the tortoise lived happily ever after, and the owner was extremely happy. But those are the sort of things that happen that it's quite a good example really of the variety. There's a lot of humour, but also there's an animal in trouble, and I've been able to sort it out through a mixture of sort of science and bravado, and it had a great outcome, a happy owner, and the tortoise was fine. I saw it a week later, all good. So that's the sort of silly thing that happens in first opinion vetting, where it's great fun.
Exactly. And it seems silly, and I can definitely see why you'd laugh about it, because poor thing, but to that person you made a massive life-changing world for them, and that was brilliant. And well done for spending the time to do the research and all that stuff, because that is really important. And what a cool fact to find out. So that's absolutely brilliant. But poor thing, ouch. I remember when I went to start one of my clinics I worked in, and the very first day, my very first operation I had to do the anaesthesia for was a winky amputation, and I was like, really? I was like, are you being funny? But no, it was true. Poor dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, wasn't a tortoise. But yeah, wow, that is quite a story.
Yeah.
So Paula has got, it's a bit of a sad question, but it is also quite relevant because we've just had the Grand National. So how do you feel about the Grand National when you see beautiful horses being killed or so badly injured that they have to be put to sleep?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, Paula. And it's obviously a controversial topic. I think purely from the animal perspective, you look at it and it is hard to understand sometimes. When I went to university in Liverpool, and they do the vetting work for the Grand National because they're a big specialist centre. And so it's quite interesting talking to them about it. Their perspective is the horses are bred for that purpose. They absolutely love it. It's their pursuit. We've just been talking about my hobbies. That's the horse's hobby is that exercise. But then the moral dilemma is it fair of us to put them through it? And, I just don't know. It's very complex, and as an animal lover, it's incredibly difficult to watch. So yeah, very hard question to answer, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And I don't want to use the pun, you sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
But I can understand that completely. It's a very sensitive subject, isn't it? And it's a huge subject. And you're right. I've actually watched documentary after documentary on it, interestingly, just because I'm fascinated about the opinion that isn't mine. Because it's important to keep an open mind. And I actually went and worked in a racing yard for a couple of years because I kept seeing that there was this massive discussion, and I was like, well, then let's go work in it and see it. And I definitely know there were places that were not like my yard, but I have to say my yard, the trainer, although he swore like a trooper, I've never known anyone to swear as much as him. Like, he'd string a sentence out with more padding swear words than anything else. So he was quite scary, but he treated those horses like gold. I mean, I know they are technically to them, but what I mean is, like, we were paid really well to go and pick stones up out of the track so they wouldn't hurt their feet, and we were paid to like go and pick ragwort out, and we were, I remember that there was a guy who got a whip ban and he was then banned from the yard and all that stuff. So I still don't like it. I'll definitely add. I'm just saying I did try really hard to try and see both sides of the story, because I sort of see there is that, but it's a horrible subject, really, isn't it, as well? So
yeah, it's just so complex, isn't it? I agree. I am sitting on the fence, but I can see both sides of it. But obviously our lives professionally are animal based, and it's hard. It's hard to see past suffering that the animals are going through, but difficult.
Completely. Pat, thank you, Paula, for that question, and yes, bringing us to a very a big topic to discuss that really is probably a whole webinar on its own, really. But it's really nice of you to get involved, so thank you very much. And anybody else watching, please ask any questions that you've got, and any light-hearted questions too. I'm sure those are all good fun as well. Sorry, lost my train of thought completely then in all of that. So what part of being a vet still grosses you out? I love that question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I think some of the smells are pretty bad, I have to be honest. It's normally
Easter's
around
coming.
So cats are famous for getting abscesses. They go out and about and they have a squabble with another cat, and cats have really funky bacteria in their mouths. So if they bite each other, sometimes you don't know about it for a few days because they've got quite a lot of fur, and then suddenly an abscess will arrive, which is sort of bacteria under the skin just kind of erupts up like a volcano. And when you let that all out, it's very satisfying because you've solved the problem. But the smell sometimes is horrendous, and you just can't get used to it. It's weird because when you work with animals, you get used to most of the smells, and I think people come in who don't work in a vet, that they must think that it smells horrendous most of the time, and like not just animal smells, but like the cleaning products and whatever. But yeah, there's still some of the smells that set you off. In farm animal work, like cows, the worst one was when they've had a calf, and then all their placental membranes and things that sometimes they don't come out with the calf and they stay inside, then they get infected, and then the smell is really, really difficult to deal with. But yeah, other than that, not a great deal grosses me out. We have got a lot of work experience students, and it's quite funny because a lot of them do kind of pass out or go white and just have
A
to
lot
sit
of
down.
them.
Yeah, I reckon half of them. And
Really?
doing stuff like just like castrating a dog. So I'm just chatting away because we do it all the time. It doesn't freak us out. But the room is reasonably warm because you're operating, so you've got to keep the temperature high, and there's strange smells, and you're cutting into tissue and things are bleeding, and that's completely normal. That's just what operations are like. But if you're 16, you've never seen that before, it can be a bit overwhelming. So yeah, quite a few of them seem to have a wobble and go outside for a glass of water.
Wow, that's really interesting because
Yeah.
I remember when I was nursing, we'd obviously have work experience, and the odd one would get a bit fainty funny.
Yeah.
But really was the odd
It's
one.
the
I'm
young
wondering
generation now, Donna.
That's what I'm wondering.
Made of sense.
Wow, is that what phones do to you?
Yeah, if they're not looking at their phones in theatre, that's right. If they're actually watching what you're doing, they're just fainting. That's a huge generalisation. I'm sorry, young people who are I say young people like I'm really, really old, which I'm not. But
hey, suck it up, right? Here's what it is. Wow, that's amazing. That's that's just hit my mind. Paula has also said they stink. My cat beat up every cat in the street, and she definitely means the abscess, not the cats.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I think any cat owners can relate to my story, because if your cat's been beaten up or been in a squabble, sometimes they burst at home, and the smell is pretty impressive. But it's satisfying because once it's out, it's often solves the problem. So that's a good thing.
Oh, completely. Yes, absolutely. So what would your dream achievement be if time and money was no object?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know the scope of it. I guess probably like my main anxiety in the macro world, like in the wider world these days, is to do with climate change. So it's probably something to do with helping keep the warming under 2 degrees or whatever the latest target is. But I don't think it's clearly it's not going to be one person that can do it, and a vet from Windsor's got no real nothing interesting to add to the debate other than we can all do our bit.
No, I'm just taking you away from that. I'm not accepting that. The fact you even said that, you've just touched loads of people's lives. That is a big thing. So no, I'm not accepting that you can't make a change. You absolutely can.
I don't want it to sound like I feel I can come up with this one amazing, nuclear fission idea that's going to do it. But that's probably in a macro level, other than, things are going on at the moment. There's obviously a lot going on in the world, but global warming is pretty terrifying, really. And actually, veterinary is pretty bad for that. So anaesthetic gases, pretty bad. A lot of plastic waste, and a lot of sort of single-use materials in medicine in general. And the veterinary profession's actually on that. There's a big clinic in north of London called Davies Veterinary Specialists, and they're really progressive on that front. They're a real leader. They're helping the profession really sort itself out on that front. They're doing loads of lectures about it. So shout out to them. They're very inspiring.
I have to say it is probably something that again has changed a lot, because a lot more things are disposable than used to be. So like, I know it sounds terrible, but and I'm not again saying whether rightly or wrongly, because I know the cleanliness and inconvenience, blah blah blah. But we had to wash and sit and pick hairs off the green towels, and
that's a really relevant comment. I just thought about that the other day. So as you do more advanced surgery, like if so a big thing that we would both deal with is dogs that have knee problems, and when you do knee surgery these days, we use disposable medical drapes, and that is being proven to be the way that is the most sterile for the dog. But you end up with reams of this sort of plasticky waterproof material that then just gets thrown in the bin, and then we're wearing disposable gowns and gloves and masks. I actually have my own hat, or a few hats that I wear now. But yeah, like not long ago, we used to have a towel gown and towel drapes, and it just got cleaned, washed, sterilised. And you do wonder whether we've gone too far. And so the problem is, in all walks of life, that's the sort of level of drilling down everyone's got to do to try and look in the mirror and see what you can do in your own capacity. But I think the veterinary profession as a whole has a lot to do actually on that front.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you've got to take responsibility for what you can manage in your individual scenario as well. Like, because each clinic's going to be different for what they can do. And like, I mean, even my little practice, I've got a eco award from the Surfers Against Sewage because, well, I collected plastic pet food packaging, which I only recently stopped because now Sainsbury's does it. So I'm like, okay, fine, I haven't really got space, but I was doing that. And I take blister packs, medical paracetamol blister packs and stuff. I'm forever going, because I actually drop it down to Superdrug, but I'm trying to help it happen and be more convenient. But it is terrible in that the amount is unbelievable, and it's not me; it's even dispensing it, obviously. But it's, I mean, I took another 2 bags down today, and the guy's just like, oh God, because there's so much coming into him, and they don't know what to do because they're the collection, but actually where they're sending it to is they're saying they can't handle it either. So there's so much waste it can't even be handled. So I had to store all of the collections here between December and end of March it was, by the time I finally could get it into there, because they were like, we can't take it, we'll just have to chuck it in landfill. And I'm like, I'm not chucking it in landfill, my clients have actually saved this. So I had it all in my house.
Well, good for you. I mean, that's the level, that's the sort of level you've got to go into. Well, another thing we're trying to do a bit more of is online checks. And so we started doing them in the pandemic for obvious reasons. But then what we found was with post-surgical cases, an online check is actually often all you need. So someone's got their phone, you're on an online video thing, and they can show you the wound. You can talk to them about the dog or the cat, how things are going. You can see the animal move around. If there's anything that you're worried about, you can say, okay, come in the car and we'll have a look. But if you can save that animal, in a cat's case, maybe it's operated on 2 days ago, and you say, oh, you need to come in for a 2-day check. So this poor cat that's got a broken leg that you've only just operated on gets bundled into a little basket, down in the car, bumbled along the road. It's probably quite painful in the car, then comes in, waits in a waiting room, then comes in for a 2-minute check. Yeah, looks fine. But also from the environmental perspective, we've realised they've had to drive here and they've driven back again, and maybe they don't need to. And obviously fuel prices are a big issue as well. So I think things like that are going to become more relevant. And it's interesting, something like the pandemic has sort of forced us into that and has showed us that is okay, actually.
Yeah, it has been interesting. Actually, there's a question that's come up about that. But for the sake of my main mind and getting this in the right order, I'm going to pop these up on the right order first, because otherwise I'll lose the comments. This was back on the abscess discussion. And Carly has said, over the bed once in our house. I have to say, I didn't want to bring up my story on this, but I had something very similar, because my dog had a little abscess on his butt, and he had no temperature, no symptoms. So we decided to let it play its course. And one morning he jumped up on the bed and I went, Brian, can you go get the tissue? And it was everywhere. So yeah, I completely understand that. But luckily it was me that found it, so I could deal with it. So it was okay. And this comment Lucy has said about following your "if money was no object," she said, "Oh, it's very Pauline."
Yeah.
Fair enough, Lucy. That was a very good opportunity taken there to take a plug.
Yeah.
And Olivia says, how have you found things since the pandemic started and increased dog ownership in particular? Good question.
Yeah, good question, Olivia. Yeah. So I have to say, as a whole, we're very, very lucky. Anyone working with animals in general, as a profession, in terms of livelihoods, we've done fine, because the demand stayed there throughout the lockdowns, and then lots of people realised that they wanted a dog or a cat, and then they were stuck at home, and then they got a dog or a cat, and then suddenly demand went through the roof, and all vet practices and supportive industries have been inundated ever since. And so we're very lucky in that the work is there, but managing that has been the challenge for most practices. So trying to manage, most practices had the clients outside, and then you had some sort of way of getting animals inside, then examining the animals inside, then going back outside to discuss it with the client, or ringing them on the phone, but then they wouldn't answer their phone or whatever, there's no reception, and you're trying to do all this in a 15-minute appointment. So it was quite fraught for a while. There's photos of me standing outside in the snow a few times, and rain, and a few like amazing sunsets in the background whilst you're standing outside in a woolly hat talking about someone's cat whilst the cat is in the practice, because we're all socially distanced. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, but thankfully everyone's back inside the building now. So it's fairly normal service has resumed for a lot of practices. I don't think necessarily all, but we've decided to sort of go back to normal, and people wearing masks if they want to. But then the increase in dog ownership, I think the thing everyone's worried about, who loves animals in the animal community, is that lots of people got dogs that didn't really necessarily want them, and then we're going to give them back. And thankfully, touch wood, I haven't seen a load of that. We work with quite a few rescues in the area, and I don't think so far it's been as bad as everyone feared, but I guess that could still happen. And I think the other thing that happened, because there was a big demand for dogs in particular, the price of puppies went really high, and then really sort of crazy things were happening, like people would buy a puppy and then sell it a couple of days later like a commodity, because they could get, so people drive up north, buy one for £1,000, drive down to London and sell it for £3,000 the next day. Wow. And things like that were happening, which obviously outrageous. So yeah, it's been a fascinating, crazy time, but on the whole, we're very lucky as a profession. I think that the work has been there. Like if I happen to run a pub or a hotel, then obviously it's a hugely different story.
Yeah, I had no idea about that whole driving to get a cheaper dog and then selling it. That is absolutely shocking. I just feel so clueless when I hear things like that, because I feel like you should just.
Well, what has happened to was one of my mum's friends. She was like, I've always sold my Jack Russells for £500 or something. So she sold it for £500, and someone bought it, and then went down to London and sold it the next day. So then my mum's dog had puppies, and she genuinely didn't know what to sell them for, because she wanted the right type of owner. She didn't want to price people out who, just wanted a dog and would have been a great home, but she didn't want to sell them for £300, because then there would be a risk that someone would do that. So sort of interesting dilemmas like that have arisen. But on the whole, I think certainly in my practice, we're lucky that, a lot of the people we're seeing, the new families who've got into the world of owning dogs or cats, it's all been good fun and everything seems to be going okay. So hopefully that's the case for most people.
Good. Yeah. And like you touched on earlier, really, it is fascinating ultimately that the pandemic has made things just change. So, there's a big worry that all the dogs are going to go back. But actually, I think a lot of people worried that would happen because everybody was working, from home, because their office work got working from home. But actually, a lot of those same office workers aren't actually going back to the office anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And so we might not know yet, might we? Maybe in 5 years, who knows? When are we going to be? When is everyone going to go back into London or whatever it is they do?
They may never do it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting times, but hopefully, from the dog perspective, we don't have this sort of mass rehoming problem, because that would be horrendous if that were to happen.
For sure. So we've got some more comments. Paula says, a lot of people bred dogs during the pandemic and the prices were horrific. Do you think there should be better control on who breeds and go back to licensing dogs?
Yeah, Paula, that's basically, that's touching on what we were just saying. And it became a bit like the Wild West, I think. And then right at the beginning in 2020, we had people ringing their practice saying, we want a dog, we'll pay anything, we don't care. And it's like, what is going on here? So then you just got market forces. So if someone's trying to sell a litter of puppies and people are ringing up offering him £3,000 or whatever, then they're going to take it. So then the price goes up, and so it is completely unregulated. Anyone can breed a dog, and it's pretty nuts, really, if you think about it. You don't need a license. You can, it's kind of glorious in a way, the freedom of liberty that you can do that, but from an animal welfare perspective, it is concerning. One would have thought maybe the council or something would have to be involved. I don't know, but I don't know, practically, realistically, how are the council going to get involved and check that you're a responsible dog breeder? I mean, in my practice, we're in an affluent area of Berkshire. The people who breed dogs where we live, our clients, we're very lucky. We've actually had 2 or 3 litters in the last week, and everyone is really, committed and really on it and done all the homework. And we as a vet practice are really involved, which is what we want to be, not as in physically making money from it, just on the phone, speaking to them, holding their hand. Is everything okay? Yeah, exactly. And that's all brilliant, but I don't think they will go back to licensing dogs, but that the pandemic was a classic example of it. It's sort of it's the Wild West. There's no regulation, and it all did go a bit crazy there for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many sides of it that is horrendous. I mean, people going, puppy farming's moved abroad, and so much. It's this huge issue, isn't it? So Carly has also said lots of people are now planning travel, and there is a shortage of boarders. You were right about it affecting all pet professionals. So yeah, absolutely. If you've got too many dogs, and then you've got nowhere for them to go, like if you go away.
Yeah, I agree. And the kennels, we got kennels down the road from us, All Beams Kennels, and they're fantastic kennels, been going for years, and the lockdown hit them really hard. No one went anywhere, so no one puts a dog in a kennel for 6 months, and then suddenly everyone wants to go everywhere because the borders open up, and then they haven't got any staff, and they can't, where are they? How are they supposed to look after all these animals? And then at the same time, you got the perfect storm of Brexit happened just before. So if you want to take your dog to France for the weekend, you now need an animal health certificate, which is a 10-page A4 document that the vet has to fill in just before you go away. It's incredibly complicated and tiresome and expensive, because it takes us about an hour to do each one. And so you can't put your dog in the kennels. You can't take it abroad very easily. There's sort of these strange things have happened, and that's a good example of it.
Yeah, excellent. So tell us a bit more about your practice and, about its awesomeness, because you said that you were renovating. So, have you just made yourself bigger? Have you got yourself a second surgery room? What have you done?
We're so in the middle of complete chaos of COVID and consulting outside, the landlords where we live in Fifield, he was like, "Oh, I've got some more space. You can have it if you want it." And it was brilliant. So you have to say yes, because space is so hard to come by. But we had no idea what to do with it. And then we got an architect, and then suddenly this snowballed into this huge renovation project out of nowhere. But what occurred to us was all the clients were outside for almost, was the whole of last year, pretty much until late autumn. So we're like, well, if we're going to ever renovate the consulting rooms and the waiting room, now is the time to do it, because no one's inside.
True.
And we were lucky enough that the builders that we know were available. So we went for it, and we did this crazy renovation of the whole premises. And we turned what was quite a big office into a nice, big, shiny new operating theatre. I'm 6'5", and thankfully the ceiling is very high in this room, so that's wonderful. Whereas our previous operating theatre, which is still our other operating theatre, the ceiling is very low, so it's not ideal. So that's really fun and exciting. So we got an extra consulting room, so gone from 2 to 3 rooms, and 1 to 2 theatres. But the new theatre is really cool and big, and much better equipped, and big waiting rooms. A really beautiful building. It's like an old farm with a willow tree by the pond and loads of parking, and it's very convenient. And yeah, rather lovely. There's a really dedicated team. Kat is a receptionist. She's been there for years. Lottie is this legendary veterinary nurse who's been there for 21 years now. And then
Wow.
Faye, not long behind her, in the late teens of years of service. So Faye and Lottie run the job. And they know all the clients' first name terms. It's ridiculous. They know even before they've told them who they are. Like, hello, Kelperland. And you're like, oh, hi, Joe. How are you? That kind of thing. And it's lovely. That's absolutely amazing. That's what we love about it, the whole community feel. And then we've got a bigger support staff now of other nurses and vets. Yeah, it's really fun.
Oh, that's really lovely. And yeah, if you've got staff that are staying with you for that long, you're obviously doing something very right. And that is really important to so many of your clients.
We've only been there for 8 years. I can't claim.
But they stayed for the 8.
They're dedicated. So yes, that's true. They didn't jump ship when me and Camilla turned up. But yeah, Faye and Lottie, they're proper hardcore Kelperland, and their dedication. That's one of the reasons why it's such a successful practice. Yeah.
Oh, that's really lovely. No, honestly, it's just so important to have those long-term staff. So well done. So my next question, I always love to ask my vets, what do you love about physio?
Well, yeah, I think it is really important and completely overlooked, I have to say, in the training of vets, certainly in my experience, which is over 15 years ago now. But vets tend to be obsessed with bones and joints, but we're not very good at worrying about the muscles around them. And I'm creaking a bit in my old age now, and I'm going to the physio quite a lot. And I think we completely underestimate the effect of physiotherapy on animals, and it should be done much more. Even if there's nothing wrong with your animal, they can benefit from it. But
yes,
in my world, doing complex surgery, physio is a big part of the rehab, and the success, obviously, often of your actual surgery can hinge on the rehab as opposed to the actual surgery that you've done. It's no coincidence that all the big referral centres now, Fitzpatrick, the super vet, and all the big referral centres around us, the Ralph and Hamilton referrals, they all have in-house physiotherapy and hydrotherapy, and they take it really seriously because they respect how important it is. But also, like I said, in any animal it would benefit, but I think in older animals, the veterinary profession is obsessed by giving out arthritic medication, and we're getting better at that, using safer medication and better combinations of medication, but we're not very good at helping with the muscle support. And if you've got bony arthritis, but you have strong muscles around those joints, then they're much better off. If you've got bony arthritis and then you allow the muscles to waste away because they're not doing enough exercise, they're not keeping the strength up, then you really get in a downward spiral. So I think it's really important and massively undervalued at the moment.
Thank you so much, Simon. You have been a superstar, and that was like the perfect answer. So thank you so much. And also, though, you're totally right from an education point of view. And actually, Hannah Capon, who canvasses loads for obviously canine arthritis and stuff, I know she's going into the universities now to get the students to know more about it, because it's something she's really aware of as a vet, that the vets don't understand it all fully. But equally, if there's any vets watching, or any of you guys at Kelperlands want to come, I do have vets come and see practice with me for a day from time to time, cool. just to see what it's all about, because of exactly what you've just said. And all the vets that have come have always been like, whoa, mind blown, which actually is silly. But from my perspective, I just think everybody knows what I know. I always think that, you always think I'm
the same, actually.
Yeah. So you don't value enough of what you know. So really, really interesting point. And Paula is my superstar. I love Paula. She says, Donna is my hero. My pup wouldn't be in such great shape if it wasn't for her help. Thank you, Paula. I do very much appreciate it. I don't normally get all the praise on these talks. Normally the vet does. So thank you. So if you could do a Facebook Live with anybody, like this, who would it be?
Yeah, well, I presume you mean like dead or alive. It would be,
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately, it would be like, fairly stereotypical answers like Churchill or Obama or, someone like that.
We haven't had that. That's not stereotypical.
Yeah.
That's very
No.
political.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess from the veterinary perspective, I've mentioned him enough times tonight. It'd probably be Alf White, the real James Herriot. It would be fun to have met him. I bet he's probably was really grumpy and boring in real life, but his books are amazing. Super Vet, he's a pretty interesting guy.
Yeah.
Noel Fitzpatrick. So
Oh, yes.
he'd be quite interesting to talk to. But yeah, I quite like leadership. I'm quite into leadership. So people like Obama and Churchill are quite interesting characters. Yeah.
For sure. And totally different though as well. But I mean, generations apart. So obviously going to be different, but totally different leadership styles. Like,
yeah.
I'm Doco Queen. I do love watching my documentaries. So I also find Obama and Churchill both very interesting characters, mostly because of Churchill supported the Queen so much. And I had no idea. When I found out that, I was like, whoa, really? He was like little dad to her. So it's like, didn't expect that. So yeah, that's really interesting. That I think I'm with you there. I'd like to hear what I'd watch that chat. I would watch that chat. That's brilliant. So what's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Yeah, I'm not really. I don't know. I did think about this the other day, and I think sort of depressingly, I don't think I'm particularly spontaneous. Certainly not in
I don't
life.
believe it.
Yeah, not nothing particular. I can't think of anything exciting, unfortunately. That makes me sound very boring, but yeah, I don't know.
It's not boring. You just need to get a bit more imaginative about your answering. Like, I was in Tesco's the other day.
I'm too honest.
Sausages instead of bacon. You went off rails from the shopping list.
Yeah, this dog was dying on the street, and I saved it really spontaneously and amazingly, like a hero. Something like that. But no, that's not a true story.
Oh, bless you. Well, no, it doesn't matter at all. I'm glad that I made you even think about it, because you never know. Now you might decide to do something. You're going to get off this.
Yes, that should be my next step. I need to be spontaneous. I don't think you can plan spontaneity. That's sort of inherent, isn't it? Right? But in principle, I can think about it.
Do you know, I sort of agree with that. And I'm just going to tell you a story, which is just quite funny, because it's one of those moments where I was sort of prepared for something that might have been spontaneous, if that makes sense. So the reason why I've been to Bray Lake, this same friend, she works on bungee. And so she said, oh, come meet me for lunch. And I thought, I am going to meet you for lunch because you're my friend. But I also know what you do for a living, and I don't like it. But I also know I can't be trusted under pressure. So I turned up with shorts, even though I was wearing a skirt, just in case. And then I actually did. She actually did make me.
She made you do it.
Yes.
Cool.
And I said to her, oh, I'm not doing it on my own. Like, I'm only doing it if you do it. And she said, fine, I'll do it. I was like, oh, God. Nice. So now we actually ended up doing a double bungee. I mean, it was terrifying. And do you know what? I have ongoing nightmares about the fact that, because I wasn't really prepared, this is what I mean about spontaneous, not prepared, but slightly prepared. I had the shorts, but I had worn flip-flops, which meant I didn't have socks on, and you have to take flip-flops off. And they go up in this crane, and then it's got like this crosshatch thing, and your toes can go through. Like, and they didn't go through. They didn't. But my ongoing nightmare is that I jumped off and my toe got stuck and fell off.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. My head's not right.
Yeah. I've seen that crane though. That's pretty scary. That's really high, that crane, where they do the bungee off. So
I know. But next time you're there, I'm just saying it's probably my friend that's the manager. In fact, go and say,
I'll name drop you.
Donna.
Yeah, I'll drop your name and see what happens.
Oh, do. It'll be hilarious. I'm going to ring her up after this. I'm going to say, if Simon comes and speaks to you, just saying, make him do it. It was actually brilliant. It was actually amazing. I can't deny it was absolutely brilliant. And I actually did it live so that my husband and daughter could watch, because they weren't there or anything, because it was so unplanned. Yeah, it did. It was scary. I'm not going to lie. It was scary. But well worth every second. So yeah, it was definitely a good one. So speaking of dreams, what's the weirdest dream you've ever had?
Well, very sadly, the weird dreams I had when I was doing my surgical training. Like when you graduate as a vet, that means you can kind of do what you want within the profession. But if you want to do more study, then you can do certificates, they're called, which is sort of 2-3 year courses where you get extra study and exams and stuff. And I got really into bone surgery, and so lots of bone surgery is about screwing in implants and metal screws and plates into bones. And I just started going out with my wife at the time, and I'd be in bed fast asleep talking about pass me the screwdriver. So I need a 22 millimeter screw, please. And it's so sad. And she's like, you are the saddest. Just complete obsession. Yeah.
At least she was the right person, because I'm not being funny, but if you had no idea what you had been studying, that would just be scary. I mean,
obviously, it's plenty of innuendo about it as well. But
I'm not even thinking that. I'm just thinking, if somebody wanted a screwdriver while I was asleep, I'd think they were about to gouge my eyes out.
But it's interesting what the subconscious does, isn't it? That's obviously, I think to some extent, if you want to get really good about something, you do have to kind of obsess about it, and it means you're thinking about it a lot. And actually struggled a bit, because when you're so obsessed about something, you're very, very tightly adhered to the success of what you're doing. So if you're doing like new surgeries or things, you're just so desperate that they're going to work out, and it's not necessarily all to do with me and what I've done, whether they're a success or not. But for your own mental health, very difficult if you're going to be so obsessed like that. So I have learned to try and distance myself a little bit, and I don't think that I dream about screwing in screws into dogs' bones anymore. But I probably do. I don't know.
You've got used to it now. It sounds like you're a big talker in your sleep. That's what it is.
Yeah, well, I do. Yeah, I had no idea until this happened. But yeah.
That is brilliant. And no, you're absolutely right. And I always like to pick up when any vet mentions anything about mental health, because you're totally right. And I think as a profession, we're really hard on ourselves, and with so much knowledge to be absorbed about so much. And then the minute you think you don't know something, you're like, no, how did I miss this? And it's like, you probably only got discovered 5 seconds ago. And and stuff changes all the time. I mean, literally, I was telling somebody about icing their knee post-op, because we were told not to do that post cruciates for a little while, and then now it's back in, new paper, back in, we're icing again. I'm like, okay. So it's trying to stay on top of it all is really, really hard, but you also want to, and it's lovely, but you're right to protect yourself. So well done for that. So that's the paddle boarding. Well done. What's the what's the most memorable part of your career so far?
I think my dream ultimately was to own my own shop, and when me and Camilla bought the practice, it's quite a sort of boring and lengthy legal thing to try and buy a business. We knew nothing about buying any business, and it took about 6 months, I think, to buy it, and it's really scary. And but then one day we bought it on a Friday afternoon. Suddenly we owned it, and then the next day we had a glass of champagne with Mr. and Mrs. Cook, and then it was ours, and off we went. And so that was 8 years ago. That was May 2014. So 8 years ago in a month.
Wow.
So that's my proudest moment professionally so far. But forward looking, I think, big believer. Don't want to stand still. Doesn't mean I have to reinvent myself, but it's about continuing the good work that's happened so far. I don't want to rest on my laurels. Don't want it to just be the same. Want it to be excellent every year. The same, every client that comes in gets the same good service and care for them and their pets. So trying to up, the challenge is to keep those standards up and keep everyone going staff wise and motivated and happy in quite a challenging environment.
It is. And also I was going to say, you'll naturally keep evolving anyway, because life does. Life changes. It
Yeah,
just isn't the same no matter what. And like you say, you've seen some improvements because of something so weird as the pandemic.
yeah,
It's changed how you've worked, but it hasn't necessarily been for the worse. It's actually been for the better. So,
yeah.
things will keep happening. It will just keep changing. And that's really cool. So yeah, I think you're gonna be fine. You're gonna nail that. So yeah. Don't
Hope
worry
so.
about it. Natural evolution. That's all good. So, I had this question asked to me once, and I thought it was a brilliant question. What's the smallest thing you've ever operated on? Smallest animal?
uh, Guinea pigs or rats. Unfortunately, rats get breast cancer, which is really rubbish for them, and so they get it really badly. And sometimes you get like a little rat, and rats are amazing pets, by the way. They're really cool, inquisitive pets,
They
and
are.
they'll come in with a massive cancerous growth, and that is proper needlework trying to sort that out. And then the little buggers, they always bite the stitches out afterwards, which is
Yes.
quite dramatic. But yeah, I had a period of actually fixing broken legs in little things. Like we fixed a broken leg in a chinchilla, which was really fun.
Well
And
done. Did it go
and
well?
stuff like that. Yeah, it was cool. It was actually using the metal stylets in IV catheters, and you can kind of screw them in because they're just dead tiny, and make a little frame. And so I think that the little things, there's plenty we can do for them these days. So it's good fun. I think more and more practices, just because the science behind dogs and cats is so advanced, we shy away a bit from the other species, but
I
all the
agree.
other pets, that they've got their place, and there's plenty we can do for them, and it's rewarding work as well.
Absolutely. That's why I love the question. And yes, that's absolutely amazing. And I'm not going to forget about that tortoise in a hurry at
No.
all.
uh,
So, it's been an absolutely wonderful talk, and I really enjoyed it. And I now want to ask you a last question. What's your top tip for dealing with pain?
well, I guess that my top tip is there isn't one thing. It's loads of different things, and there's this word that we use, sort of multimodal, which just means you got to almost picture it like a wheel. There's different spokes coming out, and pain is. I always think, like, if you think about what's your responsibility owning a pet, probably your main responsibility over everything is that your animal isn't in pain, and we don't know about it, and we're not treating it. And to control, if you know your animal's in pain, in arthritic pain, for example, would be things like, don't allow it to be overweight, because that's a massive problem. Exercise levels, like how often you exercise, what type of exercise, is it intensive, on the lead, relaxed, are you doing adjunctive therapy, which is what you do, obviously, physiotherapy, hydrotherapy, acupuncture, and then you have medications. There's different types of medications, and I said, like, in the old days we just used to, like, the arthritis medication. Now there is all sorts of different medication that we know can be used safely in dogs and cats. There's a very new injectable medication that's come out. It's a completely different way of killing pain, which is really exciting, and seems to be having good results with minimal side effects. And then there's some crazy stuff like laser guns, and even old school things, like if you've got pain in one very focal area, like I've got painful elbow at the moment, I went to see my physio. Ice cubes, that's what I've been doing, and you know what, that is brilliantly effective.
Yep.
So I without dodging the question, I just think you've got to look at it all the way around, the pain, and there's so many different ways that it can be affect your animal. And if you look into pain in a human world, pain is associated with mental health as well, like post-amputee pain and stuff, like false limb pain is very related to mental health. And you kind of think that must be the case with dogs and cats as well. So are they enjoying their lives at the time? Is their lifestyle appropriate for whatever the pain they have? If they've got problems with their elbows, and you're just running them around chasing a ball all the time, maybe that isn't appropriate for the problem that they've got. Maybe with the best will in the world, with lots of love, you might be making it worse. So there's there's so many aspects to it. You've got to try and look at it, I think, from all them.
You have been absolutely brilliant. And it's not dodging the question. It is perfect. Your best tip is multimodal approach. Lots of different things will help get you the best outcome for dealing with your pain at the right time. That's perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, Simon. I have had a wonderful time. I've learned so much about you. It's been really great fun. I wish you all the luck in your practice. And thank you so much to the wonderful audience for being here, watching and asking so many cool questions. Take care. I'll see you in a few more weeks for our next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.